Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Iomide said, as he entered his office and found Angela seated. It's fine, Mr. Ayo. You had work to do, but I'm glad you're here now, Angela replied, with a small smile, clutching her handbag tightly. Mr. Iomide settled into his chair, his gaze resting on the woman sitting across from him. For a moment, he felt a pang of pity. The Angela he knew was a cheerful, plump woman, always full of life. But now, she looked like a shadow of herself. Her husband's sudden death had taken a heavy toll on her. He didn't blame her, though. When James was alive, he could never finish a sentence without mentioning his wife's name. That's how inseparable they were. Mrs. James, I'm truly sorry for your loss. The burial was conducted so quickly that I couldn't attend, but please accept my condolences, Mr. Iomide said sincerely. Angela smiled sadly. It's fine. My husband's family rushed everything, so it's not your fault. How are you holding up? I hope you're managing well? Mr. Iomide asked gently. Angela let out a deep sigh. Not so well, Mr. Iomide. Everything feels so hard. I keep questioning God, wondering what wrong I have done to deserve this, she said, her voice breaking as tears welled in her eyes. Mr. Iomide reached for the pack of face wipes on his desk and handed one to her. Take it easy on yourself, ma'am. You did nothing wrong. Life just isn't fair to anyone these days. Angela took the wipes from him, dabbing her tears before muttering a quiet, "Thank you." Sorry about that, she added, trying to compose herself. It's fine, Mr. Iomide reassured her. So, what can I do for you? Angela let out a shaky breath, desperation creeping into her voice. Mr. Iomide, I need your help. She paused for a moment before continuing. My husband died just a few weeks ago, yet his family is already trying to take everything he left behind. They claim it's tradition, and have even suggested that She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head as she recalled the absurd demand. Can you believe they actually want me to marry my husband's elder brother? They said if I refuse, I won't get a single thing that belongs to my husband. As Angela finished speaking, Mr. Iomide wanted to pity her. He truly did. But Mr. Henry's words kept echoing in his mind. Win this case for us, and the new building is yours. He glanced at the tearful woman before him, torn between two choices. Clearing his throat, he forced a reassuring tone. Ma'am, I understand your situation. I was very close to your husband, and I'll do everything within my power to help you win this case. Angela's face lit up slightly, a flicker of hope replacing the despair in her eyes. Thank you so much, Mr. Iomide. I'm truly grateful for your help. Mr. Iomide forced an awkward smile. It's nothing. Your husband, Mr. James, was a very good friend of mine, so it's only natural that I help his wife now that he's gone, he said, though guilt chewed at him. He had promised to help her, but it was a lie. He only said it to make her stop coming to his office, because the more he saw her, the more his guilt weighed on him. Angela smiled gratefully. May God bless you. Then, as if something had just crossed her mind, she hesitated before asking, I have one question, please. Did my husband leave a will with you? No, he didn't. Mr. Iomide replied quickly. He knew it was a lie. Mr. James had indeed left a will, and in it, he had given everything to his wife and children. But if Iomide revealed that now, he would lose the building in the estate, and he couldn't afford that. The bank was already breathing down his neck for repayment. Angela nodded, trusting him without a second thought. She never imagined that a family friend like Mr. Iomide could lie to her, but she didn't know that the heart of man was full of greed and deceit. I'm really grateful for your help, she said sincerely, but I also have one more request. Could you come to the family meeting this weekend to support me? Hearing her request, Mr. Iomide fell silent, carefully weighing his response. If he agreed to support her, Mr. Henry might assume their deal was off. But if he refused, Angela might grow suspicious and seek another lawyer, and he couldn't risk that. Then another thought crossed his mind. If he attended the family meeting in support of Angela, Mr. Henry might feel threatened and offer him even more to secure his loyalty. That meant he could keep both parties under his thumb, playing them against each other. With that realization, he looked up at the anxious woman sitting across from him and gave a slight nod. Just send me the time of the meeting, and I'll be there. Really? Angela's eyes lit up with hope. Mr. Ayomide nodded. Yes, really. Thank you so much, sir. May God bless you beyond measure, Angela said, sincerely, feeling as if a heavy burden had just been lifted off her chest. At least now, she wouldn't have to face those evil men, her husband's so-called brothers, alone. Having someone from the law on her side gave her confidence that she could win this case. No need to thank me, ma'am. I'm just doing my job. The job Mr. James paid me for. He was truly a good man. Angela sighed. It still feels like a dream, you know, but God knows best. Yeah, just be strong for your kids. Everything will be fine, Mr. Ayomide assured her. At the mention of her kids, Angela instinctively glanced at her phone. Seeing that it was almost time to pick them up from school, she quickly grabbed her bag and stood up. I'm sorry to leave so soon, but I need to pick up my girls from school. It's all right. See you this weekend, Mr. Ayomide replied. Angela nodded before turning to leave, gently closing the door behind her. Mr. Ayomide heaved a deep sigh and sank into his seat. Being a corrupt lawyer was exhausting. Guilt gnawed at him as he thought about the young widow he had just deceived. For a brief moment, he began to reconsider his choices. His fingers hovered over the building document that Mr. Henry had handed him earlier that day. Ding! A notification popped up on his phone. He glanced at the screen. It was a message from the bank, reminding him to pay off his loan before they seized his property. Without hesitation, he picked up his phone and dialed Mr. Henry's number. Whatever guilt he had felt moments ago vanished into thin air. Dinma, repeat what you just said. That's the reason for your visit? Ada asked quietly, her eyes narrowing at her brother's wife, who had just arrived with a shocking request. Dinma heaved a deep sigh before continuing. Ada, all I'm saying is that I don't support the idea of my husband taking Angela as a second wife. It won't work. Please, talk to him and make him forget about it. Ada nodded, silently observing her brother's wife. As the first daughter and third born in the family, she had her own struggles. Her husband, a driver, barely cared for her or their 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. He was only home on weekends, leaving her to fend for the family alone. Like the rest of the family, Ada envied Angela. She was beautiful and had been lucky to marry a man like James. But over time, that envy had turned into resentment. She had seen firsthand how much her brother treasured and pampered his wife, never allowing her to work or experience hardship. And now, even in his absence, Angela still seemed to have the upper hand. Ada's lips curled slightly as she considered Dinma's words. Dinma, you and I both know the kind of person Emeka, my brother, your husband, is. He's stubborn and won't listen to anyone, Ada said, shaking her head. I know, but I can't just sit back and let that woman take my husband away from me. It's not possible. Do you know, he even said he would allow her to inherit her late husband's property if she agrees to marry him. Dinma's voice trembled with frustration. Ada, please help me. Ada remained silent for a moment, deep in thought. Then suddenly, a wicked idea popped into her head. Okay, I have an idea. Dinma's eyes lit up with hope. Tell me quick, she urged, leaning in eagerly. Ada smirked. There's only one way to make your husband lose interest in Angela, and to ensure she loses the inheritance. Tell me your plan, Dinma urged. Ada glanced around her sitting room to ensure none of her children were nearby. Once she confirmed they were alone, she leaned in and whispered into Dinma's ear. Set her up with a strange man and take a video of them. Dinma's eyes widened in shock. She may have disliked Angela, but setting her up with another man, especially so soon after losing her husband, felt like crossing a dangerous line. Isn't that too extreme? She asked, frowning. Ada scoffed. It sounds like you want her to be your co-wife. You know Emeka. Once he sets his mind on something, he won't back down. The only way to change his mind is through this plan I just suggested. Dinma hesitated, deep in thought. After a moment, she sighed and nodded. All right, how do I do it? First, you need to get close to her. Pretend to sympathize with her. Once she no longer suspects you of having ulterior motives, that's when you strike. After listening to Ada's explanation, Dinma's expression shifted slightly. She knew the plan was entirely wrong, but her desire to save her marriage was much stronger. That means I won't be around for this weekend's meeting. I'll visit her separately, Dinma said. Ada nodded. You're right. Not showing up that day will also help our plan. After a brief silence, Dinma suddenly asked, But why do you hate Angela so much? What's the real reason? Ada was slightly taken aback by the question. She wasn't ready to admit that the real reason she hated Angela was her good fortune in choosing a husband. Even though Angela's husband was dead, he had left behind a huge inheritance. Instead, Ada let out a small laugh. Who said I hated her? You needed help, and I was simply giving you advice on how to save your marriage. Then, as if to change the subject, she asked, So, how are your children? They're fine. Thank you for asking, Dinma replied, picking up her bag. Ada, I should get going now. All right, we'll keep in touch. Let me see you off. With that, Ada walked Dinma to the junction, where she boarded a taxi before heading back home. Saturday came quickly, and before her in-laws arrived, Angela had already taken her children to Ma'am Jennifer, who had agreed to babysit them. She wanted to face her wicked in-laws alone. Angela knew she couldn't afford to appear weak in their presence, otherwise they might try to take advantage of her. But she also had their family lawyer backing her, so she wasn't afraid in the slightest. Determined to make a strong impression, she dressed in a black dress and applied a little makeup to conceal the heavy bags under her eyes from lack of sleep. Her in-laws arrived at noon. Her husband's brothers, along with two elders, were the first to enter. Moments later, his two sisters, Ada and Susan, walked in, their faces set in frosty expressions. Once everyone was seated, they all turned their attention to Angela, who remained on the single sofa, her eyes fixed on her phone. She didn't bother to look up, acknowledge their presence, or even offer them any refreshments. Angela, I see you've grown wings. Can't you greet your in-laws, or even offer us some cola? Bucci thundered angrily. Don't mind her, Ada snapped, eyeing Angela with contempt. For someone who just lost her husband, she still found time to dress up and apply makeup. Who knows? Maybe she's expecting a guest after we leave. Perhaps the real father of her children, Susan added, supporting her sister. That's why a man should never disregard his family for some stranger he calls a wife, Bucci said again, shaking his head. He had expected to find Angela looking pale and broken, but instead, her confident demeanor unsettled him. Angela didn't utter a word. She didn't even acknowledge their presence, her attention fully fixed on her phone. Her silence infuriated them, and just as Bucci was about to lash out again, one of the red-cap elders cleared his throat. My children, let's not fight over nothing. We all know why we're here, to get an answer from our last visit. The elder then turned his attention to Angela. "Angela, my daughter," he called. "Ichi, go ahead. I'm listening." Angela replied indifferently, still hoping her lawyer would arrive sooner. "Have you given any thought to the question we asked you the other day?" Angela picked up her phone and glanced at the elder. "Ichi, which question are you referring to?" she asked, setting the phone aside. "If you have considered becoming your husband's elder brother's second wife," the elder clarified. Angela let out a cold chuckle, her gaze sweeping across the room. Then, with an air of quiet authority, she rose to address them. "I would have given you all the respect due to my late husband's family, but seeing how you treat his wife, I take it back. I mourn for him, not just as my husband, but for the fact that he truly cared for his family, only for it to be in vain." Angela's cold gaze swept across them. "As for your ridiculous proposal that I marry his deadbeat elder brother, I've already given my answer. But since you all seem so deaf and forgetful, let me repeat myself. Over my dead body. Do you hear me? I said. Over my dead body. Will that ever happen?" Just as she finished speaking, Mr. Ayamide rushed in. "I'm sorry, everyone. Traffic was terrible. That's why I'm late," he explained hurriedly as he took a seat. The moment Mr. Henry saw him, he exchanged looks with his brothers. "What's going on?" He thought he had already bought the lawyer over to their side, so why was he here? Maybe he's here to support them, but they hadn't invited him. Or is he here to support Angela? While these thoughts ran through their minds, Mr. Ayamide stood up to introduce himself. "Hello, everyone. Some of you may not know me, but I'm Mr. James's family lawyer and the custodian of his properties. I have with me all the legal documents for his landed properties and buildings that are under my care. That's all. The meeting can proceed." Emeka, their eldest brother, scoffed and rose to his feet. "You're welcome, Mr. Lawyer," he said with a smirk. "Since you're here, you might as well hand over my brother's properties to me as the head of this family. We'll take care of them from here." Mr. Ayamide met his gaze with a sly smile. "And may I ask why?" Emeka's expression darkened. "Because they belong to my brother, and you're just a stranger. Besides, in my town we have traditions, and they must be followed," he said, his irritation growing. "Your tradition has nothing to do with me," Mr. Ayamide said firmly. "Mr. James entrusted me with his properties while he was alive, and I won't just hand them over carelessly without proper legal procedures. Besides, Mr. James does have a family." "Oh, thank you, Mr. Ayamide. Thank you," Angela chimed in, her heart swelling with relief. Finally, things were starting to go in her favor. "My son, I don't know much about your laws, but in our kindred, we have traditions that must be followed," the second red-cap elder interjected. "James, our son, had no male child, so by custom, his wealth rightfully returns to his family. His elder brother will inherit his properties, and, as tradition demands, take his late brother's wife as a second wife to ensure she is cared for." "Exactly," James's family echoed in unison, nodding in agreement. Mr. Ayamide exhaled deeply, then gestured for Angela to come closer. She leaned in as he whispered something into her ear. After a brief moment, he straightened up and prepared to speak again. "There's a way to settle this amicably," Mr. Ayamide began. "My client has made it clear that she refuses to marry her husband's elder brother, and you cannot force her, unless, of course, you are prepared to take this matter to court. Even the court respects tradition, so I think dragging this issue any further is a waste of time," Mr. Henry said, crossing his legs comfortably. "First of all, Mr. Lawyer, read out my brother's properties. Let's hear exactly what he left behind," Susan suggested, and the rest of the family nodded in agreement. Mr. Ayamide glanced at Angela, who gave him a subtle nod, signaling him to proceed. Clearing his throat, he began listing the assets under his care. Mr. James's estate includes 3 buildings, 2 successful businesses, 5 cars, 3 landed properties, and a hostel building. By the time he finished, the room fell into stunned silence. Even Angela was taken aback. She had only known about the 3 buildings and 2 businesses. Her husband had never mentioned the hostel or the additional landed properties. And who knew how much he had hidden away in his bank accounts? As the reality of James's wealth sank in, his family's greed intensified. The thought of seizing everything and securing their own fortunes became overpowering. And this time, they were willing to risk it all, even if it meant silencing Angela and her children forever. Even the lawyer wasn't left out. He wanted a fat share of the inheritance too. "I have a suggestion," Mr. Ayomide suddenly spoke up, breaking the tense silence in the room. All eyes turned to him as he continued. "What suggestion are you referring to, Mr. Ayo?" Angela asked in a low voice. "Since your husband's family insists on upholding tradition, I propose that we all visit the village and seek an audience with the king. We should ask him to show us exactly where it is written that the elder brother must take his late brother's wife as a second wife, and that all his wealth should revert to the family simply because he had no male child." A heavy silence fell over the room. The shift in their expressions was immediate. They knew it was all a lie. If the matter reached the village head, things would take a serious turn. Emeka exchanged uneasy glances with his brothers, while the 2 elders, who had been bribed to support the so-called tradition, stole nervous looks at each other. A flicker of fear began to creep into their hearts. "I fully support this idea, Mr. Ayomide. Thank you so much," Angela said, with a triumphant smile, her eyes burning with hatred as she glared at her husband's family. "Mr. Lawyer, whatever happens in this household has absolutely nothing to do with you. Just hand over my brother's property, and you will be paid off." Ada snapped angrily. Mr. Ayomide smirked as he looked at Ada. "Ma'am, things don't work that way. Mr. James entrusted his property to me for safekeeping, which automatically makes me involved in this case." Turning to the 2 elderly men, he addressed them. "My elders," he called out. "Speak, my son," one of them responded. "Am I speaking your mind? It's not that I am against your laws and traditions. I simply want to understand their origins." "That is not a problem at all," the man replied with an awkward laugh. "Then I suggest we reschedule this meeting," Mr. Ayomide said, noting the sudden silence in the room. He smiled inwardly. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. Initially, he hadn't even opened the file detailing Mr. James's assets, so he had no idea how extensive the wealth was. But now, if James's family agreed to his terms, he intended to alter the will in favor of himself and James's brother. And once that was done, he would relocate to another state and lie low for a while. "So, when are we going to the village?" Angela finally asked, breaking the silence, since no one else seemed willing to bring it up. No one wanted to mention it. "It's an urgent matter, so we will go next weekend. Is that acceptable to everyone?" Mr. Ayomide asked, but the room remained silent. "Silence also means agreement," he concluded. "Then, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." He turned to Angela and assured her, "We'll stay in touch." With that, he excused himself and headed for the door. "What was that all about?" Mr. Henry demanded angrily, following Mr. Ayomide to his car and blocking him from getting in. "What do you mean? What was what all about?" Mr. Ayomide repeated casually, raising an eyebrow. "You damn well know what I'm talking about." Leaning against his car, Mr. Ayomide smiled lightly. "Believe me, if I knew, I wouldn't be asking you." You came here, Mr. Henry began in a slightly raised voice, but realizing he was still in Angela's compound, he quickly lowered his tone. You came here to support Angela after our meeting a few days ago. You promised to be on our side. Mr. Ayomide chuckled softly. Come on, Mr. Henry. Don't put words in my mouth. I never promised you anything. All I said was that I would get back to you after thinking about it. But now, I've decided that what you're offering is a bit too small for me. So now, what do you want? Mr. Henry asked, his frustration evident. Mr. Ayomide shrugged. If I can get the hostel too, we might have a deal. At those words, Mr. Henry's expression darkened instantly. You're such a greedy bastard, he spat in anger. Unbothered by Mr. Henry's insult, Mr. Ayomide scoffed. You knew exactly who I was before coming to me with this deal, so there's no need to remind me. Now, do we have a deal, or should I win this case for Angela? You and I both know your so-called tradition has no legal standing in court. Mr. Henry gritted his teeth in frustration. He had set his sights on that hostel the moment he discovered his brother owned one. What are you saying? My time is limited, Mr. Ayomide pressed, glancing at his watch. Mr. Henry exhaled sharply. I'll speak to my brothers and get back to you, but until then, don't do anything stupid, you hear me? He pointed a warning finger at him, his voice cold. Mr. Ayomide merely shrugged, unlocking his car. That depends on what you consider stupid, and if you take too long, I might as well side with Angela. Are you threatening me? Mr. Henry asked, his tone laced with suspicion. You can see it however you want. Goodbye for now, Mr. Ayomide said with a smirk, winking at Mr. Henry before getting into his car. With a loud rev of the engine, he sped off, leaving Mr. Henry standing there, seething with anger. What's going on? Is the deal off? Bucci asked as he approached, having just seen the lawyer drive away. Mr. Henry glanced around cautiously before replying, Let's talk outside. Without another word, he turned and walked away. With Bucci, his younger brother, following closely behind, Angela was helping her children with their schoolwork in the sitting room when a knock sounded at the door. At first, she ignored it, assuming it was the gateman. He usually knocked before entering. But when the knocking persisted, she finally called out, Come in, the door is open. The door creaked open, and Dinma stepped inside, all smiles. She was dressed in an expensive black dress, paired with a red handbag and matching red heels. With poised steps, she walked toward Angela, who stared at her in surprise. Confusion etched across her face. Angela had never been close to her husband's family, let alone their wives. It wasn't that she had anything personal against Dinma, but ever since her Dinma's husband had kept insisting on making her his second wife, a bitter feeling had settled in her heart. Her expression darkened slightly. Good evening, Auntie, her children greeted Dinma in unison. How are you, my beauties? Dinma replied with a warm smile. Fine, thank you, Ma. Angela's gaze remained fixed on Dinma as she turned to her children. Girls, take your schoolwork upstairs, she instructed. She remained silent, not speaking to Dinma again until her children were out of sight. Won't you at least offer me a seat? Dinma asked with a smile. Though her lips curved upward, the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Still, she did her best to sound natural. Why are you here? Angela responded indifferently, ignoring her question. Dinma let out a small chuckle before seating herself across from Angela, crossing her legs with practiced ease. My husband was right when he said you didn't offer them any refreshments when they visited. And honestly, I was glad you didn't. I mean, who offers refreshments to people coming to take everything from them? Angela's frown deepened, confusion clouding her features. She stared at Dinma, trying to make sense of her words. Why are you here? She asked again, this time more firmly. I'm here to see you, Dinma began, her gaze fixed on Angela. For what reason? Angela asked flatly. Dinma shrugged. Nothing serious. I just wanted to check on you. I know my husband and his brothers are wrong for what they're doing to you, especially while you're still mourning your husband. I don't support their wickedness. I've fought my husband countless. Dinma, Angela cut in, her tone sharp. If you're here pretending to be friendly just because your husband insists on taking me as a second wife, then you've wasted your time. It will never happen. So don't bother yourself. Just leave my house. Her words made Dinma feel a bit awkward, but she remained determined to accomplish her goal. She wasn't leaving until she did. I'm not here for that, Dinma replied smoothly. I know you won't agree to it. Even if I were in your shoes, if I had someone like James as my husband, I wouldn't want a deadbeat man who only knows how to leech off others coming anywhere near me, let alone marrying him. Angela's brows lifted in surprise the moment she heard Dinma call her own husband a deadbeat. She narrowed her eyes slightly, wondering what this woman's real mission was. Was she here to comfort her, or was this some sort of trick? I know you're doubting my reason for coming here, and I don't blame you, Dinma said, noticing the confusion on Angela's face. If I were in your shoes, I'd feel the same way. Angela remained silent, watching her carefully. I'm just here to comfort you, that's all. Why? Angela found herself asking. Because I'm a woman, and I can fully relate to your pain, Dinma replied, her voice warm and sincere. Inwardly, she was pleased. Angela seemed to be believing her. Encouraged, she decided to add more to her lie. I know I wasn't close to you when your husband was alive, but that was because I envied you. I always felt inferior to you. Angela frowned. Felt inferior to me? She repeated, puzzled. Yeah, Dinma nodded. You might not have noticed, but you have this kind of big man's wife vibe. Whenever we were in the same gathering, I always felt small next to you. And with the way the women in the village gushed over you and your family, just because your husband was wealthy, I figured it was best to just stay in my lane. I never intended to make you feel that way. I was just being myself, Angela said. Dinma laughed. You're right. It's not your fault I felt that way. I was just being honest. That's all. Angela studied her for a few moments before deciding to believe her. Let me get you something to drink, she offered after a brief silence. Such a naive woman, Dinma thought to herself, shaking her head slightly, but she quickly put on a concerned expression. No. Today I came here to comfort you, to help you feel a little better. I know you're holding in a lot of emotions, trying to stay strong for your children. But Angela, if you keep bottling everything up, you'll explode. And that's not good for you. Angela hesitated, her mind drifting to Dinma's words. She wasn't wrong. The emotions inside her were suffocating. She felt like she was on the verge of breaking down. So, what do you think? Dinma asked when Angela remained silent. Angela frowned slightly. Explain what you mean first. She sat back down, watching Dinma closely. A mischievous smile played on Dinma's lips as she leaned in. What's the best way to relieve stress if not alcohol? She said smoothly. Hearing Dinma's words, Angela frowned slightly. But I don't have any alcohol here. My husband doesn't drink. Not here, Dinma corrected with a knowing smile. But there's a place nearby. I go there whenever I need to clear my head or take a break when my husband or children get on my nerves. Angela hesitated. She was torn. Leaving her children alone didn't sit right with her, but at the same time, she felt like she was on the verge of losing her mind. She needed an escape, just for a little while. Sensing her uncertainty, Dinma leaned in. Don't worry about your children. They're like my own. If you get drunk, I'll take care of them for you. But trust me, we won't be out too late. I have kids to look after too." Her voice was smooth, persuasive. Angela exhaled slowly, still battling with her thoughts. Angela didn't know what to say. One part of her urged her to go, while the other warned her to stay. "Can I really trust this woman?" "How about we bring the drinks back home?" she suddenly suggested. "And let your children see you drinking alcohol?" Dinma scoffed. "That's not a good idea at all." "But," Angela began, only for Dinma to cut her off instantly. "This is exactly why your co-wives kept their distance from you," Dinma said with a dramatic sigh. "Always acting like you're better than everyone else. Even now, after I went against my husband to come and console you." "All right, I'll go," Angela suddenly blurted out, cutting her words short. "Now that's the right spirit," Dinma said with a pleased smile. "Go get dressed. I'll be waiting right here." Angela nodded and headed upstairs. As soon as she was out of sight, Dinma pulled out her phone and quickly typed a message. "The stupid girl has taken the bait. Make sure to bring your guys along." She hit send and smirked, slipping the phone back into her bag just as Angela returned. "Let's go," Dinma said cheerfully, standing up. "I hope we won't take too long," Angela murmured as they stepped outside. "You're driving so we'll get there on time," Dinma said as they got into Angela's car. Angela started the engine and drove off, but her mind was restless. She couldn't stop thinking about the children she had left alone at home. Did I make the right choice trusting my enemy's wife? The thought nagged at her, making her glance briefly at Dinma before turning her focus back to the road. "You're thinking about your children, aren't you?" Dinma asked, breaking the silence. Angela didn't respond, but Dinma smiled knowingly. "It's normal to worry about them, but you also need to take care of yourself. You need to stay alive and in the right state of mind to be there for them." A few minutes later, they arrived at J. King's, a luxurious hotel known for its secrecy. After parking the car, they stepped inside. But instead of heading toward the bar, Dinma led Angela straight to the reception and requested a room. Angela frowned. "Why are you booking a room?" she asked, confused. Dinma smiled at the receptionist before pulling Angela aside to whisper, "Remember, your husband just passed away. You wouldn't want people talking behind your back." Angela hesitated for a moment, then nodded in understanding. "All right, I get it now." Dinma nodded and returned to the receptionist to finalize the room booking. Together, they headed upstairs to the room. Unbeknownst to Angela, 3 men were quietly observing them from a distance. They sat around a table, casually discussing over a bottle of drinks, their eyes constantly drifting toward Angela. As soon as they caught sight of her, they couldn't help but stare, mesmerized by her beauty. "You know, everything still feels like a bad dream to me," Angela began, her voice tipsy after having a few glasses of alcohol. "We were supposed to have lunch together when he got the call to go check on his goods," she continued, looking at Dinma with a sad smile. "I didn't want him to go, but he promised he'd be back in a few minutes." Suddenly, she burst into hysterical laughter, tears forming in her eyes. "Stop drinking. You're already drunk," Dinma said softly, reaching to take the glass from her. But Angela held onto it tightly and downed the entire contents in one gulp. "Pour me another drink. I want more," she demanded, stretching her hand toward Dinma, who gladly refilled her glass. "I miss my husband," Angela murmured, wiping her tears as she gulped down another drink. "Do you think he'll come back?" Now that the alcohol had fully set in, it took over Angela's mind. She kept laughing and rambling about her husband, while Dinma listened silently, continuing to refill her glass. It wasn't long before Angela collapsed onto the chair, completely intoxicated. Dinma smiled, as she sent a message to the men, instructing them to come in and giving them her room number. As soon as the message was delivered, she set her phone aside, then turned to the heavily intoxicated Angela. Without hesitation, she dragged her onto the bed and began to undress her. She removed Angela's clothes and left her only in her undies. Knock, knock. A gentle knock resounded at the door. She quickly left the undressed Angela on the bed and rushed to open the door for them. 3 guys, all dressed in black, and entered the room, and Dinma closed the door. She's on the bed. You guys would just pretend to have fun with her while I video. You can only touch her intimately, but no intercourse. Did you hear me? Dinma warned them sternly. After listening to Angela's story of how she missed her husband, Dinma did have a bit of sympathy for her. The men frowned because they fantasized about having a good time with the woman. Touching her would arouse us so much. Why can't we just do the main thing? One of the men argued, and Dinma glared at him in anger. Shut up and do what you're paid to do. Come in, let's just get this over with and look for other women to satisfy us, the second guy said. And they get to work while Dinma took a video of them. The 3 men undressed themselves and began to touch Angela all over her body. One of them kissed her, while the other played with her breast, and the other one was caressing her legs. In her dream, Angela was in bed with her husband. He was touching her, and she was smiling. With the influence of the alcohol, Angela's body was reacting to the touch since she wasn't in her right senses. The 3 men were professionals. They knew exactly where to touch a woman to awaken her desires. Under the influence of alcohol, Angela was no exception. Once Dinma had gotten what she wanted, she told the men to stop. But the way they had touched Angela had also stirred something in her. Instead of Angela, she offered herself to the men, and together they indulged in their pleasure. A few hours later, they were done, and night had already fallen. Dinma paid the staff, dressed Angela back up, and helped her to the car. At the reception, the staff grew concerned and asked what was wrong with Angela. Dinma quickly explained, "She's not good with alcohol." After confirming that Angela was just drunk and not in any serious danger, they allowed Dinma to take her home. By the time Dinma brought Angela back, her children were already asleep. Without much thought, she dumped Angela on the couch in the sitting room and left. Before she even reached home, she had already sent the video to a blogger she knew, instructing them to edit and post it online. The next morning, Angela woke to a gentle tap on her shoulder. As she opened her eyes, her 2 daughters stood by her bedside, staring at her. "Mummy, did you drink?" Winnie asked, wrinkling her nose at the strong smell of alcohol on her mother's breath. Angela's entire body ached, as if she had been in a fight with several hefty men. But the worst was the pounding in her head. She could barely mutter, "Get me water." Winnie rushed to the fridge to fetch a bottle of water, while Kiara handed Angela her phone, which had been ringing non-stop. Angela took the water first, gulping it down before picking up the call. "Hello, Auntie Jennifer. Why are you calling so early?" she asked tiredly. "I can't believe you're still sleeping at this time of the morning." Auntie Jennifer's voice came sharply through the phone. "What's the time?" "It's past 12, Winnie answered. Angela's eyes widened in shock. Past 12? Her children hadn't eaten all morning. "Auntie Jennifer, let me call you back," she began, but her aunt's next words stopped her. "Child, what did you do last night?" Angela frowned slightly. "Nothing. Just had a few drinks with my sister-in-law." Auntie Jennifer let out a deep sigh. "I just sent you a video that has been trending since last night. Watch it." The call ended abruptly. Confused, Angela quickly opened the video. The moment she saw what was on the screen, she flung her phone away, her heart pounding in terror. "Jesus!" she screamed. Angela's phone rang non-stop all day, but she avoided it like the plague. The only person she tried calling was Dinma, but the call wouldn't go through. If not for her children, she would have gone to Dinma's house to confront her and demand answers about what had happened the night before. But her children hadn't gone to school that morning because she had been too drunk the previous night to wake up early and prepare them. After managing to feed them, Angela went up to her room, locked the door, and broke down in tears. She cried bitterly, blaming herself over and over again for ever believing in and trusting people who had only wanted to bring her down. Even as her two children pounded heavily on the door, Angela didn't open it. She just lay there, crying her heart out and cursing her fate. Why was she born to suffer? When she was little, she lost her parents at an early age. Her step-parents had mistreated her until she finally left their house at 15. From that moment on, she had struggled to survive on her own until she met James, the man who had changed her life. Now, watching the video again, Angela felt sick to her stomach. The way she responded to their touch, as if she was enjoying it, made her feel disgusted with herself. And the comments? The video had gone viral, labeled, "A widow who lost her husband a few weeks ago, caught having fun with 3 men in a hotel." Each comment she read chipped away at what little hope she had left. In that moment, Angela realized there was no love in this world. "What's the purpose of living?" Angela whispered to herself. The thought of ending it all crept into her mind, and before she could reconsider, the overwhelming guilt and bitterness consumed her. Without hesitation, she stood up and walked into the bathroom. Her eyes landed on a razor blade lying nearby. She picked it up, her hands trembling, and without a second thought, pressed it against her wrist. The blade sliced deep into her skin, and as she sank to the floor, she watched her blood spill onto the cold tiles. "It's all for the better," she muttered through her tears. Meanwhile, Winnie and her younger sister had been knocking frantically on their mother's door, but there was no response. Panic set in. Sensing that something was terribly wrong, little Winnie rushed to grab the phone and called Jennifer, telling her that their mother had locked herself inside. At the same time, Ciara, the younger girl, sprinted to find the gate man, begging him to break the door open. When they finally forced their way inside, they were met with a horrifying sight: Angela lying in a pool of her own blood. The two girls froze, their bodies stiff with fear, their minds unable to process what they were seeing. Shock gripped them to their very bones. They kept crying and screaming their mother's name, their voices filled with desperation. Even the gate man stood frozen in shock, unsure of what to do. In the midst of their panic, Aunt Jennifer rushed in. The moment her eyes landed on Angela's bleeding form, she sprang into action. With steady hands, she applied first aid to stop the bleeding before rushing Angela and her children to the hospital. While Angela was in the hospital, Mr. Henry had already agreed to Mr. Ayomide's request, granting him his desired price. That alone filled the greedy man's heart with joy. When he came across the viral scandal video of Angela's supposed infidelity, he was even more pleased. It made his scheme all the easier. Without hesitation, Mr. Ayomide drafted a new will, forging James's signature so skillfully that no one would suspect it was fake. He also recalled James once mentioning that he owed the bank a significant sum and had used his house and cars as collateral. To make the will appear more balanced, so Angela wouldn't grow suspicious, he bequeathed the house and cars to Angela and her children, while allocating the rest of James's assets to his family. It was all falling into place, just as he had planned. 3 days later, Angela was still in the hospital when her husband's family arrived, accompanied by their family lawyer. At first, She thought they had come to check on her, but what followed was a shock she never saw coming. Mr. Ayomide cleared his throat and with a smug expression informed her that he was there to present her late husband's will. As he read it aloud, Angela listened in disbelief. When he finally finished, she took a shaky breath and weakly asked, "Mr. Ayomide, I vividly remember you telling me that my husband left no will. So now, can you explain this?" Before the lawyer could respond, Ada suddenly snapped, her voice laced with venom. "Will you keep that filthy, slutty mouth shut?" Angela flinched, but Ada wasn't done. "I knew it. Those two bastards aren't even my brother's children. If you had the audacity to frolic around with 3 men in a hotel just weeks after his death, who knows how many men have been between those slutty legs before now?" Sandra scoffed, crossing her arms as she eyed Angela with disdain. "Do you really think you have a say here? You should be grateful that the house and cars were even willed to you and your bastards. Yet here you are, asking useless questions." Angela sat there, her throat tight with unshed tears. Shame washed over her in suffocating waves, making life feel unbearably bitter. If not for her 2 little girls, she might have considered ending it all again. Ma'am Angela, you're right. I did tell you that your husband left no will," Mr. Ayomide began, his voice laced with fake sincerity. "But that was because on the day he brought the will to my office, I wasn't around. So, he left it with my secretary, and she only just recently handed it over to me. I'm really sorry, ma'am." Angela stared at him, her heart heavy with exhaustion. She knew it was all a lie, every single word. But at this point, she was too tired to fight. Since the house and cars were the only things left to her, she decided she would use them to make a fresh start. She swept her gaze over the faces before her, each one filled with disgust and contempt. Through her tears, she smiled, a small, bitter smile. Then her gaze lingered on Emeka, Dinma's husband. They planned this together, she thought. They set me up. But she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Not anymore. What wrong have my husband and I done to you people? Angela's voice trembled with both anger and pain. James was good to every single one of you. Yet the moment he died, you all conspired against his family just because of his wealth. But mark my words, karma is real, and it will find each and every one of you. And even if it doesn't, she paused, her eyes locking onto Emeka. I, Angela, will make sure justice is served. Emeka, tell your wife that she will reap exactly what she has sown.